Okay, so family right. Everyone's got one in some form or another, or at least some idea of what it means to them. And that's what we're diving into today.
Yeah, that's it, exactly.
We've got some pretty amazing stuff to go through. Listeners have sent in articles, books, even some personal anecdotes about their own families, everything from those everyday moments to some really big questions about how families are changing.
Yeah, I mean, you always think you know what family is until you start actually looking at it closely, right?
Yeah,
From all these different angles, and suddenly it's this huge, complex thing.
totally. So what we're going to do today is really dig into all of this, see if we can pull out the most important ideas about how families actually work, what they mean to us, and why they're just so central to our lives.
Sounds good to me.
So one thing that's really interesting is that when we talk about family, there's no one-size-fits-all definition anymore, is there?
Not all.
I was looking through what everyone sent in, and I mean, there's everything. The traditional family with parents and kids, but also big extended families, grandparents, aunts, uncles, all playing a big role. And then you've got single-parent families, blended families, where people are coming together from different backgrounds. It really seems like what family looks like totally depends on where you are in the world, your culture, even just personal choices.
Absolutely. I mean, just looking at the stuff we have here, you can see how much that's changed even in the last few decades. It's really fascinating how family structures are evolving. But the one thing that ties it all together, I think, is those dynamics, those sort of unspoken rules and patterns that make each family unique.
Oh, yeah, that's such a good point. I never thought about that as
Yeah.
the dynamics.
Yeah, you've got your family's vibe. It's like its own little microculture, right?
Totally.
And the dynamics depend on everyone's roles, too, like what each person brings to the table.
Okay, so let's break that down a little bit. When we think about traditional family roles, you usually have the parents, right? They're the caregivers, the providers. They're making sure everyone's got what they need, food, shelter, all that. But it goes way deeper than that. It's the emotional support, the guidance, those life lessons and advice that help kids grow and learn and figure things out.
For sure. Parents are the original role models, whether they like it or not, right?
Yeah, they set the tone for how relationships work, how you deal with the world, all that stuff. And I think sometimes we forget that children aren't just passively receiving all this. They actually shape the family dynamic, too.
Oh, totally. I mean, think about it. As they get older, they start contributing in different ways, right? Helping out with chores, maybe even looking after younger siblings.
Right.
It's where they start building a sense of responsibility and taking ownership, becoming their own people.
Yeah, it's like they're learning how to be part of a team from the very beginning.
Exactly. And it's not just parents and kids either, right? You've got this whole network often that plays a role.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you've got grandparents who are often these amazing sources of wisdom.
Yeah.
They've lived through so much. They have a different perspective.
It's like instant history lessons just from hanging out with them.
Right. And then you've got siblings, which is a whole other dynamic, isn't it?
Oh, totally. I mean, part friend, part rival, sometimes part sworn enemy, depending on the day, right?
Exactly. But at the end of the day, they provide this incredible built-in support system. They get you in a way that no one else can.
Yeah, and I guess what's cool is that these roles aren't fixed either. They change over time.
For sure, they have to. As kids grow up, as families face different challenges, everyone has to kind of adapt.
Right.
And that's where things like open communication, being honest with each other, respecting boundaries as people change, all of that becomes so important.
It's like a constant dance, figuring out the steps as you go.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so now I want to get into something that I think is just so fascinating, family traditions. You know those things that you do over and over again that really make a family unique?
Oh, yeah. Those are the best, aren't they? They really tie you together.
Totally. And it can be anything, right? It could be how you celebrate certain holidays or birthdays.
Like opening presents on Christmas Eve or having pancakes for breakfast every Sunday.
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe it's something totally quirky that no one else does, but it means the world to your family.
I love that.
I was reading this one article about a family that had this tradition where they'd all go out and collect these specific rocks every summer vacation.
Rocks.
Yeah, I know it sounds kind of weird, right?
Right.
But they display them in this special bowl in their living room. And each rock represented a different memory or inside joke.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so, I mean, it can be anything. But what's important is that it brings people together,
Yeah.
creates these shared experiences that you look back on and you're like, man, that was us. That was our thing.
For sure. And they become these anchors, especially when things are changing or life gets tough.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got the big holidays, right? Like Christmas, Thanksgiving, Diwali, where there's often all these specific foods. You eat decorations, you put up ways you celebrate.
And those things become so powerful. I mean, just the smell of a certain dish can transport you back to your childhood.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be these big fancy things either, right?
Not at all.
Even just something as simple as having dinner together as a family every night.
Right.
Or taking a walk in the park on Sundays. Those little routines can become traditions too.
And they're so important for building that sense of connection and consistency.
Yeah, it's like they create this rhythm to family life. And then you've got these bigger cultural traditions that are often passed down through generations.
Yeah.
Like special ways of celebrating weddings or births or coming-of-age ceremonies.
Right. This can be so beautiful and meaningful.
Yeah, they connect you to your history, your heritage, your community.
And they also help pass down values, right, from one generation to the next.
Yeah, it's like these traditions are the threads that weave the whole family story together.
I like that a lot. The threads of the family story.
Now, another big thing when we talk about family is support, right? Like family's supposed to be that safety net that you can always rely on.
Exactly. It's that feeling of knowing that no matter what you're going through, you've got people who have your back.
Right. And support comes in so many different forms. It could be emotional support, just being there to listen when someone's having a tough time, offering encouragement, being that shoulder to cry on.
Yeah, that kind of support is invaluable, especially for kids. It helps them build that confidence and resilience they need to face the world.
Totally. And then you've got practical support, right? Like helping out with chores or childcare when someone's overwhelmed or stepping in when there's a crisis,
Right. Or even just offering to drive someone to the doctor or help them move apartments.
Yeah, those everyday things that can make such a huge difference. And of course, sometimes support means financial help too.
Yeah, sometimes it's just about being able to lend a hand in whatever way is needed.
And it's not just about what parents provide for their kids either, right? It's about siblings supporting each other, grandparents stepping in to help.
Oh, absolutely. Extended family can play such a huge role. I was reading this one story about a family where the grandma moved in to help take care of her grandkids when her daughter got sick.
Wow.
Yeah, and it wasn't just practical help either. She brought this incredible sense of stability and love to the whole family during a really hard time.
That's amazing. And it's a two-way street too, right?
Yeah.
Like giving support can be just as important as receiving it.
Oh, totally. I mean, think about when you help someone out in your family, it strengthens that bond, makes you feel more connected.
Yeah, it's like you're investing in the relationship.
Exactly. Now, I do think it's important to acknowledge that even in the most loving families, there's going to be conflict.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't have that much closeness without some bumps along the way, right?
Absolutely. I mean, think about it. You've got all these different personalities, different opinions, different needs, all under one roof.
Exactly. Parents and kids are going to disagree about stuff. Siblings are going to fight over who gets the last cookie, which is part of life.
Right. But what really matters is how you handle that conflict. I mean, that's what separates the families that thrive from the ones that fall apart.
So how do you do that? How do you handle conflict in a healthy way?
Well, one of the biggest things is communication, right? Being able to talk openly and honestly about what's bothering you.
But that's easier said than done, right? I mean, emotions run high. People get defensive.
Oh, I know, but it's so crucial. It's about creating a space where everyone feels heard and respected even when you disagree.
Yeah, like it's okay to be angry or upset.
Yeah.
But you got to express it in a way that doesn't shut down the other person.
Exactly. And sometimes it's about knowing when to take a step back, If things are getting too heated, maybe you need to cool off before you can really talk things through.
Yeah, like count to 10, take some deep breaths, all that.
Right. Right. And when you do come back to the table, it's about actively listening to each other, trying to understand where the other person's coming from.
Yeah, it's about empathy, right? Putting yourself in their shoes.
Exactly. And sometimes, even with the best intentions, you might hit a roadblock.
Right. And that's where bringing in a neutral third party can be helpful.
Like a therapist or a counselor.
Yeah, or even just a trusted friend or family member, someone who can help mediate and offer a different perspective.
It's like having a referee to keep things fair.
Right.
And I guess it's important to remember that resolution doesn't always happen overnight.
No, it's a process.
Yeah, it takes time sometimes, a lot of time and patience, and it's messy.
Yeah. But if you stick with it, if you're committed to working things through, it can actually make those family bonds even stronger.
So conflict isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's how you approach it that matters.
That's such a great takeaway. And speaking of things changing, we have to talk about how the whole structure of family is evolving.
Oh, yeah, that's one of the biggest things we've seen in all the research and stories people have sent in.
It's huge. I mean, the idea of what a family looks like has totally shifted, even from just a few decades ago.
Right.
You've got so many more single-parent families now, which comes with its own set of challenges, but also incredible strength. Yeah, I mean, single parents are basically superheroes juggling everything.
Totally. And then you've got the rise of blended families, which, is when two families come together.
Right. With kids from different relationships, all figuring out how to be a new unit.
Exactly. And that can be tough, but it can also be really beautiful, creating these whole new connections and ways of being a family.
Yeah, it's like building a family from different pieces.
Exactly. And, it's not just those structures either. We're seeing a lot more acceptance of cohabiting couples, not necessarily getting married, but building a life together.
Right. And of course, more and more same-sex couples are building families too.
Absolutely. And it's beautiful to see how the definition of family is expanding to be more inclusive and diverse.
Totally. And let's not forget about grandparents raising their grandkids, which is becoming more common.
Yeah, those grandfamilies are playing a huge role.
It's amazing the love and stability they provide those kids. I think it just goes to show that family isn't about a specific structure. It's about the love and support and commitment you share with each other.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So how about we talk a bit about parenting styles? Because, I mean, everyone approaches raising kids differently, right?
Oh, yeah, that's a whole other world, isn't it?
I know. And there's so much research on this. I mean, different styles, different outcomes. It can feel overwhelming for parents.
Absolutely. But, at the core of it all is just wanting what's best for your kids.
Right.
So there are all these different labels for parenting styles, but one that often comes up is the authoritative style.
I've heard of that.
So this one is all about being warm and supportive, but also setting clear expectations and boundaries.
Okay, so it's not just letting kids do whatever they want.
No, it's about finding that balance between being loving and being firm.
Right. And I guess the idea is that it helps kids develop self-discipline and responsibility.
Exactly. And studies have shown that kids raised with this style tend to be more confident and independent, and they do better in school too.
So that's good.
Then you've got the authoritarian style, which is more about strict rules and obedience, less room for negotiation.
Like my way or the highway kind of thing.
Yeah, and while that can create well-behaved kids, sometimes it can also lead to resentment or rebellion down the line.
Right, because they haven't learned to think for themselves.
Exactly. And then there's the permissive style, which is all about being super nurturing and loving, but maybe not having a lot of rules or boundaries.
So like the cool mom or cool dad who lets their kids get away with anything.
Right. And while that can be fun in the short term, it can also make it hard for kids to develop self-control and respect for authority.
Yeah, it's like they haven't learned that actions have consequences.
Exactly. And then, on the far end of the spectrum, you've got the uninvolved style, where parents are emotionally distant and not really engaged in their kids' lives.
Right. That one can be pretty damaging.
It can be really tough on kids, because they're not getting the love and support they need to thrive.
Yeah, they might feel neglected or like they don't matter.
Exactly.
It's important to say, though, that most parents don't fit neatly into one category, right?
Right. It's more of a spectrum.
Yeah, they might use different approaches depending on the situation or as their kids get older.
Totally. And different cultures have different ideas about what good parenting looks like, too.
Right. But at the end of the day, I think the most important thing is for kids to feel loved and valued and supported no matter what parenting style their parents use.
Oh, absolutely. And speaking of important things, we can't forget about communication.
Oh, yeah, that's like the key ingredient in any healthy family, right?
It really is. And I'm not just talking about talking, I mean, really communicating, listening to each other, understanding each other's perspectives.
Yeah, because sometimes what's not being said is just as important as what is being said, right?
Exactly. You've got body language, tone of voice, all those subtle cues that can speak volumes.
And for kids especially, learning how to communicate effectively is so important, for building healthy relationships, for expressing their needs, for resolving conflicts.
Totally. And it all starts with creating that safe space where they feel comfortable talking about anything.
Right, where they know they're not going to be judged or shut down.
Yeah. Exactly. And as parents, it's about being open to hearing what they have to say, even if it's not what you want to hear.
Yeah, because even if you don't agree with them, they still need to feel validated.
Absolutely. And, sometimes conflicts are going to arise. That's just part of family life, but it's how you handle those conflicts that matters.
Right. So instead of yelling or getting defensive, it's about taking a deep breath, listening to each other's side of the story, and trying to find a solution that works for everyone.
Exactly. And it's a skill. It takes practice, but it's so worth it because good communication builds trust and strengthens those bonds.
Yeah. And sometimes even with the best communication, things can still break down.
Right. Oh, for sure. Misunderstandings happen. People get hurt feelings.
Right. So what do you do when that happens?
Well, I think it's about being willing to repair those rifts.
Okay.
Taking the time to apologize, to talk things through, to find ways to move forward.
Yeah, it's like saying, okay, we messed up, but we're still a team and we're going to figure this out.
Exactly. And as families change and evolve, that ability to communicate openly and honestly is what keeps everyone connected.
It's like the glue that holds everything together.
I love that analogy, the glue that holds it all together.
So we've talked about a lot of the internal dynamics of families, but there's also this whole external world that's constantly pushing and pulling on us, right?
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, families don't exist in a vacuum, right?
Right. So
Yeah.
how do you navigate all those pressures, work, school, finances, relationships, all while trying to maintain a happy and healthy family life?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It's like a constant balancing act.
It really is. And I think one of the biggest things is setting boundaries.
Yeah.
Making sure that work life doesn't completely take over family life.
Yeah, because it's so easy to get caught up in all the demands.
Oh, totally. I mean, with technology, we're always connected. It's like work follows you everywhere.
So how do you switch off? How do you create that separation?
Well, I think it's about being intentional about it, having those designated family times where you put away the phones and the laptops and you just focus on being present with each other.
Yeah, like having dinner together without checking your emails every 5 minutes.
Exactly. And it's about prioritizing those moments too, making them non-negotiable.
And it's not just about time management either, right? It's about sharing responsibilities within the family.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it can't just be one person carrying the whole load.
Yeah, everyone needs to chip in, whether it's chores or childcare or just emotional support.
Right. It's about working together as a team.
And I think it's also important to remember that self-care isn't selfish.
Oh, that's such a good point.
Yeah, because if you're constantly running on empty porn, you're not going to be able to show up for your family in the way that you want to.
Exactly. Taking care of yourself actually allows you to take better care of the people you love.
Right. So whether it's taking some time for yourself to read a book or go for a walk or just have a quiet cup of coffee, those little things can make a huge difference.
They really can. And it's about communication too, being able to talk to your partner or your family about what you need to feel balanced and supported.
Yeah, because they might not even realize that you're struggling.
Exactly. It's about being open and honest about your needs.
And I guess finding that balance is an ongoing process, right?
Totally. It's not about achieving some perfect state of equilibrium. It's about constantly adjusting and adapting as life throws you curveballs.
Yeah. It's like a dance, learning to move with the music.
I like that. And at the end of the day, I think what all of this comes down to is that family really is the foundation of everything.
It's where we learn about love and relationships and responsibility.
It's where we get that sense of belonging and identity.
It's our first community.
And, even though families are changing and evolving, those core values of love and support and commitment, they remain constant.
Yeah, and those values are what make families so resilient, so able to adapt to whatever challenges come their way.
Absolutely. And as we wrap up here, I just want to say that I hope this conversation has given you some food for thought.
Yeah, me too. It's been amazing to really dive deep into all these different aspects of family.
And, as you go about your day, I encourage you to think about the people in your life who make up your family.
Yeah, your chosen family, your biological family, whoever it is that makes you feel loved and supported and connected.
Because at the end of the day, that's what truly matters.
And maybe think about some of those traditions you cherish, the memories you've made, the little moments that make your family unique.
And even if your family doesn't look like the traditional model, it's still valid. It's still important.
Exactly. Family is what you make it.
That's a great way to put it. And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder all of this. Until next time, thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everyone.